Across the African savanna, control is never permanent. Territory shifts, resources thin out, and every advantage exists under constant pressure. For predators, staying alive is not just about hunting successfully. It is about holding ground, defending access, and responding to threats that never stop testing boundaries. In this landscape, power is fragile. It must be reinforced daily or it disappears. Two species operate at the center of this instability. One depends on structure, coordination, and calculated force. Its influence is visible, deliberate, and costly to maintain. The other applies pressure over time, testing limits through numbers, persistence, and relentless proximity. Their paths intersect not by choice, but by necessity. Food draws them together. Water narrows the distance between rivals. Seasonal changes compress space until confrontation becomes unavoidable. These encounters are rarely planned and almost never clean. What follows is not a single battle, but a pattern. Approach, response, escalation. Sometimes control holds, sometimes it fractures. Each interaction reshapes the next one. A retreat today invites pressure tomorrow. A successful defense drains energy needed later. Over time, the cost of maintaining influence grows heavier for both sides. This is not a rivalry defined by emotion. It is a system driven by pressure, reaction, and consequence. And as conditions continue to change, the struggle intensifies not because either side seeks conflict, but because survival leaves no alternative. Here, stability is temporary, and every moment of control carries the risk of collapse. Control on the savanna is not claimed once it is paid for repeatedly. For lions, maintaining influence over territory requires constant investment. Their approach relies on coordination, positioning, and the ability to act decisively at the right moment. When it works, the result looks effortless. When it fails, the cost becomes immediate. Lionesses form the operational core of the pride. They plan movement, assess risk, and execute hunts that must succeed quickly. Large prey offers high returns, but also demands precise timing. Energy spent on a failed attempt cannot be easily replaced. Every chase is a calculation between reward and depletion. This method creates pressure of its own. Ambush-based hunting depends on conditions aligning wind direction, cover, and proximity. When prey escapes into open ground, the advantage evaporates. Repeated failures weaken the pride, forcing longer recovery periods and increasing vulnerability to interference. Male lions carry a different burden. Their presence reinforces territorial influence through size and intimidation, yet this influence requires constant patrol. Borders must be checked, rivals must be challenged. Each confrontation risks injury that could remove a male from effectiveness entirely. Control, in this system, is never passive. Cubs add another layer of cost. They require concealment, protection, and time resources that stretch the pride thin during difficult periods. Lionesses must balance hunting with guarding, often leaving young hidden while they move farther from safety. Every absence introduces risk. When resources decline, these pressures converge. Decisions become narrower. Lions must choose between defending a position or conserving strength. Holding ground too long can lead to exhaustion. Yielding space invites further testing. What appears as dominance from a distance is, up close, a fragile arrangement. It functions only as long as conditions remain favorable and challenges remain manageable. Once pressure increases from multiple directions, control becomes expensive to maintain. And in a landscape where pressure rarely eases, even small miscalculations can accelerate decline. Where lions rely on moments of precision, hyenas operate through continuity. A hyena clan applies pressure without pause. There is no single decisive strike, only repeated advances that test tolerance and response. This approach does not require ideal conditions. It thrives on persistence. Hyena organization centers on hierarchy, enforced through constant interaction. Rank determines access to food and safety, and these positions are defended aggressively. Conflict within the clan is frequent, but it serves a purpose, reinforcing structure that allows rapid coordination when opportunity appears. Unlike lions, hyenas do not depend on silence or surprise. Their presence is deliberate. Vocalizations communicate movement, intention, and numbers across long distances. What begins as a small group can quickly become an overwhelming force as others converge. This ability reshapes confrontation. Hyenas exploit hesitation. They approach gradually, evaluating reactions. A step forward invites a response. A lack of response invites escalation. Over time, this strategy drains opponents who rely on short bursts of action rather than sustained engagement. Their physical build favors stamina. Long pursuits wear down prey and rivals alike. Injury is still dangerous, but the clan structure absorbs loss more easily than a pride dependent on a few key individuals. Within the den, this mindset is reinforced early. Cubs compete immediately for position and resources. Those unable to assert themselves weaken quickly. Survival here is conditional, not guaranteed. This early pressure produces adults that are unafraid of confrontation and highly responsive to change. When conditions shift, hyenas adjust quickly, altering movement patterns, targeting weakened opportunities, and exploiting moments of transition. What they lack in raw power, they replace with presence. What they cannot secure instantly, they claim over time. Against systems built on control, constant pressure becomes a destabilizing force. It forces decisions, it exposes limits, and once pressure reaches a certain threshold, retreat becomes not a choice, but an outcome. The confrontation between lions and hyenas is not a single clash, it is a collision of systems. One is built on control, structure, and decisive action. The other survives through pressure, numbers, and relentless testing. When these systems intersect, the outcome is rarely immediate. Lions respond to intrusion with force. A charge, a display of power, a calculated attack meant to end the challenge quickly. Against most competitors, this is enough. The message is clear. Resistance carries a cost. But hyenas do not respond to messages the same way. They withdraw only far enough to reassess. Distance is not defeat, it is information. Every reaction from a lion is observed. Speed, confidence, coordination. A strong response delays escalation, but it does not stop it. Time becomes the battlefield. Hyenas return repeatedly, often at inconvenient moments. Near kills, near cubs, near exhaustion. Each appearance forces a response, and each response consumes energy. The lion's advantage remains real, but it becomes conditional, effective only while strength holds. As encounters accumulate, small changes appear. Lionesses hesitate longer before committing. Males patrol more frequently, reducing rest. Kills are eaten faster, increasing tension within the pride. Cubs are moved more often, exposed to unfamiliar terrain. None of these shifts are dramatic. Together, they reshape the balance. Hyenas exploit transition phases: dusk, dawn, moments after hunts when attention is divided. They test from multiple angles, never fully engaging, never fully retreating. The goal is not victory in a single exchange, but erosion across many. This erosion creates decision points. Should the pride defend aggressively and risk injury, or conserve strength and risk losing ground? Every choice closes another option. When lions push back hard, they may win the moment, but injuries linger. When they withdraw slightly, hyenas gain confidence and proximity. Over time, space compresses, safe zones shrink. The confrontation becomes less about strength and more about sustainability. Control demands stability. Pressure thrives on instability, and instability is easier to create than to eliminate. Once instability sets in, even dominant animals begin reacting instead of directing. Movement becomes responsive, strategy narrows. The system designed to control begins absorbing impact instead of projecting it. At this stage, the conflict no longer needs to escalate dramatically. It only needs to continue. Every prolonged conflict reaches a point where momentum replaces intention. For lions and hyenas, this tipping point does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, disguised as routine. Encounters feel familiar, responses become predictable, and predictability is where advantage shifts. The pride begins operating closer to its limits. Recovery windows shorten, patrols overlap with hunting, coordination holds, but only just. The margin for error thins. Hyenas sense this. Their approaches tighten, distances close faster, vocalizations grow bolder, less exploratory. What once tested now presses. The clan no longer asks whether resistance will come, it measures how delayed it will be. This is where outcomes crystallize. A single injury changes calculations. A limping lion cannot patrol effectively. A distracted lioness risks a failed hunt. One compromised individual reduces the effectiveness of the entire system. Hyenas do not need to overpower the pride. They only need to outlast its weakest phase. As pressure intensifies, lions face a narrowing set of responses. Escalation risks loss, withdrawal risks collapse of influence. Holding position demands more energy than the environment can provide. Eventually, something gives. Sometimes it is territory abandoned gradually, then fully. Sometimes it is access to kills, contested until the cost outweighs the gain. Sometimes it is cub survival, forcing relocation under unfavorable conditions. None of these outcomes resembled defeat in the traditional sense, yet all of them reshape dominance. The savanna does not reward strength alone, it rewards systems that remain functional under strain. When control becomes too costly to maintain, it transforms into liability. Hyenas, operating without reliance on singular moments, absorb change and continue forward. Their system bends without breaking, losses redistribute, pressure persists. What remains is not a winner standing over a defeated rival, but a landscape reorganized by endurance. And in that landscape, presence matters more than power. When confrontations subside, the landscape rarely returns to its previous state. There is no clear signal announcing the end of pressure. Instead, absence becomes noticeable. Hyenas appear less frequently in one area and more persistently in another. Lions patrol familiar routes only to find them less secure than before. The shift is gradual, but undeniable. Territory does not vanish, it thins. Boundaries soften. Areas once defended aggressively become transitional zones, crossed quickly rather than occupied. Kills are made closer to cover. Cubs are moved more often, not because danger is immediate, but because risk has become unpredictable. For lions, the cost of dominance reveals itself slowly. Energy budgets tighten. Hunts are chosen more carefully. Failed attempts matter more than they used to. A pride that once controlled space confidently now calculates movement based on effort rather than authority. Hyenas, meanwhile, adjust seamlessly. They fill gaps without claiming them outright. Their presence grows where resistance weakens. What they lose in direct confrontations, they recover through consistency. Over time, the environment begins responding to their rhythm instead. This transition is not driven by fear. It is driven by efficiency. Lions do not abandon territory because they are beaten. They withdraw because the return on investment declines. Every step taken to maintain control must now justify itself against growing strain. And strain compounds. One reduced hunting success affects cub growth. Slower cub growth delays independence. Delayed independence increases vulnerability. Vulnerability demands more protection. Protection consumes energy. The cycle tightens. Hyenas exploit these chains of consequence without needing to initiate new conflict. Their advantage lies not in what they force, but in what they allow pressure to create. Over time, the system rebalances, not in favor of one species over the other, but toward whichever can function longer under instability. In this phase, dominance is no longer visible through confrontation. It is visible through persistence, and persistence reshapes the savanna more quietly than violence ever could. The conflict between lions and hyenas does not resolve because it is not designed to. Both species occupy overlapping roles within the ecosystem. Both depend on the same resources. Both adapt quickly to changes in availability, pressure, and opportunity. As long as these conditions exist, friction is unavoidable. What changes is the form it takes. During abundance, tension lowers, space expands. Encounters are brief and decisive, but scarcity compresses movement. Paths overlap. Time windows narrow. Every interaction carries more weight. This is when patterns repeat. Lions reassert control where possible. Hyenas test margins where resistance fades. Neither side escalates blindly. Each responds to signals, constraints, and consequences left behind by previous encounters. The result is not chaos, but equilibrium under stress. An equilibrium where neither side eliminates the other, because elimination would destabilize the system they both rely on. Instead, pressure cycles continue, shaping behavior across generations. Cubs grow observing responses to intrusion. Young hyenas learn when persistence pays off and when it does not. These lessons harden into instinct. What appears to be rivalry is, in reality, a long-term negotiation between survival strategies. One favors strength and coordination. The other favors adaptability and endurance. Neither is universally superior. Each excels under different conditions. This balance ensures that no single method dominates permanently. Control rises, pressure responds. Pressure intensifies, control adapts. The cycle continues, not as repetition, but as evolution. And evolution does not choose winners, it chooses survivors. In the end, the struggle between lions and hyenas reveals a truth that extends beyond the savanna. Survival is not defined by moments of strength. It is defined by the ability to remain functional when strength is no longer guaranteed. Lions demonstrate the power of structure, unity, and decisive action. Their presence shapes the environment instantly, but instant influence demands constant renewal. Hyenas demonstrate the effectiveness of persistence, flexibility, and collective pressure. Their influence accumulates slowly, but it rarely disappears. Neither approach is flawless. Dominance without sustainability collapses under strain. Pressure without limits fails against decisive force. The natural world balances these strategies not by choosing one, but by forcing both to adapt continuously. This is why the conflict never resolves, and why it never needs to. The savanna remains stable not because peace exists, but because pressure does. Every confrontation, every withdrawal, every return reshapes behavior. Over time, these adjustments create a system resilient enough to endure change. In that system, survival belongs not to the strongest, nor the most aggressive, but to those who can absorb impact, recover, and continue forward. Because in the wild, control is temporary, but adaptation lasts.